Welcome to Behind the Muscle podcast. Today's guest is an entrepreneur and personal trainer. Today's guest is Clayton Russell. Clayton, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Quentin, thanks for having me, man.
For sure. So Clayton, we're just going to jump right into two questions I kind of like to start all of my podcasts off with. The first question that I have for you is, who are a few of your favorite bodybuilders of all time?
Well, I guess to begin with, I would obviously have to say Arnold. I grew up in the 80s, so, my body is the product that it is, would pretty much goes back to, seeing Arnold, Conan, Commando, Sylvester Stallone, Jean-Claude Van Damme, G.I. Joe. In my mind growing up, that's what a real man looked like, and that's what I wanted to look like. So, first and foremost would be Arnold. As I got into bodybuilding, I have a list of favorites, but probably my favorite bodybuilder of all time would be Dorian Yates. His work ethic, the shadow, God, I don't even know where all to go with it. I have so much respect for Dorian, and where he is in life right now. Also up there as a favorite, and it's along the same lines with Dorian, would be Kai Green. And it's just, I feel that both of them, took bodybuilding and it became more than physical, it became spiritual. Just ton of respect for those guys. I have other favorites, but I would definitely say that Dorian is the GOAT in my opinion.
Awesome, man. I love it. I love it. All right. So Clayton, the second question here, just to kind of kickstart our conversation, at what age did you start lifting weights? And then why did you start lifting weights at that age?
So I'm the youngest of three. So I grew up with older brothers that were always, we had cement weights in our basement. And I would try to work out with my brothers. Most of the time they wouldn't let me. They were part of the mindset, which isn't true. It's been disproven, that it'll stunt your growth. And, but I always grew up doing, push-ups, and I was always active. I grew up, basically in the woods, in the country, always active, playing sports, football. But I actually got my first gym membership when I was 18. I kind of got serious working out at home with like curling bar and all that stuff, a rink-a-dink weight bench and stuff when I was like 17. But when I was 18, I got my first gym membership.
Now, you said you grew up in the 80s. Gyms back at that point and 90s and even into the early 2000s were quite a bit different than they are now. They were, I would say, probably a lot more hardcore and not so much like fitness centers like we see today. That first gym, Clayton, that you joined, was it just kind of like a mom and pop gym, or was it a bigger fitness facility, or a Y? What was it kind of like?
It was actually, it was Australian Body Works, which LA Fitness bought out. So when LA Fitness came into Georgia, they did something that I don't think a lot of gyms had done at the time. And they basically, to get their presence over here on the East Coast, they bought out all the Australian Body Works. So I know that LA Fitness likes to own the real estate and all that stuff with their business model. But to really get into the area, I know they bought the Australian Body Works. So basically it was a big box gym, full gym, cable equipment, free weights, machines, several thousand square feet. But it was a really good experience. It was a big gym. It wasn't a mom and pop gym.
Okay. Now, one other question I have for you, Clayton, before we kind of get into your childhood a little bit more. when you went to the gym, did you have, I know you said you had two older brothers, but did you have anybody kind of teach you how to lift weights, or any mentors, or was it just through magazines? How did you kind of get to actually learning how to lift weights the proper way?
So that's all like a big transformation, a big journey. I'm 15 years as a personal trainer now. I'm big on functional training. You know, if I had to coin a term for my own type of training for clients, it would be functional hypertrophy, but Charles Poliquin beat me to that term. But so, yeah, I had an older buddy, one of my best friends. It was his older brother. He had already worked out, and he was one of them guys growing up that always had a phenomenal physique, just genetically gifted. But he kind of took me under his wing and showed me how to work out. And I got pretty serious for like a 6-month stint. And I went from 123 pounds to 147 pounds, and kind of did my own 5-day routine. Learned a lot from a few other guys in the gym that were, I think, you know, a lot of people, once they see that you're consistent, they'll kind of help you out if they see you making mistakes. So I was pretty fortunate to, you know, have some mentors, influencers that helped. If I were to look back on it now, I don't know that it would be, you know, the best advice per se, but I didn't get injured and I stuck with it. So it was sound advice, I guess.
Perfect. And I'm excited to get into the functional hypertrophy that you kind of coined your type of training. We'll get there in a minute, but so you've already mentioned that you're the youngest of three. You said you kind of grew up in the woods. I'm assuming you kind of grew up in the country. Why don't you talk about that childhood a little bit? You know, what was your childhood like? Were you involved in sports? Paint that picture for us, maybe up to high school, and then we'll transition, move on from there.
Yeah. So, again, I grew up with two older brothers. We were pretty physical. So, always wrestling and fighting. My oldest brother's like 7 years older than me. So my middle brother, we were 26 months apart. And I admired him, looked up to him. He was fastest kid in his grade. You know, he could jump, he could beat everybody, arm wrestling. I basically just followed him everywhere. But that kind of helped me out, you know, being real, you know, growing up physical, not being scared of, you know, fighting, fist fights and all that good stuff. Played sports. However, I was always the smallest person in my grade. So around middle school, everybody started hitting growth spurts and I didn't. So I kind of, at that point, didn't really stick with the sports. I guess just, you know, intimidation. And ultimately, that's kind of what led me into working out, just inferiority complex, wanting to be more confident. High school, didn't really play any sports. I was always popular, kind of like a social chameleon. I could hang out with the jocks. I could hang out with the guys who did drugs. I could hang out with the band guys. I could hang out with, you know, people in older grades, younger grades. But again, I was always, I guess, you know, popular, but so yeah, I was comfortable, but on the inside, I was, you know, kind of intimidated because I was smaller than everybody. Wanted to be.
Now, what did you have a pretty strong influence from your parents, or were they kind of in the background in your childhood?
They were in the background. Both of my parents were business owners. My dad, same thing. He was a really good athlete growing up. He was like the fastest kid in his baseball league and in football. But my dad worked 6-7 days a week running a company with my grandfather. My mom, same thing. She worked about 6 days a week. So, you know, when I was younger, they weren't exactly in the picture, but being older now, I'm extremely grateful for that because my work ethic basically comes from that. And something even my wife at times doesn't like is I don't mind working 7 days a week. That's one of the things with bodybuilding, with Dorian Yates, just work ethic. That's the key to having everything you want in life is not being afraid to sacrifice. So I could definitely say that I learned that from my parents, my grandfather. Yeah.
Was there anybody else? I know you said your middle brother was a pretty big influence. You really looked up to him, but were there any other adults? Was there a coach? Was there a teacher, some other adult during that childhood that you look back and say, you know what, that person really had a strong influence on me as a young person, and even maybe still has an influence in your life as an adult?
I'd have to really think on that. I mean, I had a few good teachers in school that kind of sparked my mind to think. As I got older and started to understand the importance of discipline and learning, I had some mentors and some elders, whether it be in work or through church or I'd probably say about like that. And those influences really helped me hone in. When I was younger, I was so busy trying to fit in and, just be part of the herd that I didn't really know who I was. So it was kind of after school and after graduating and honestly through bodybuilding and stuff that helped me to have the confidence. For instance, I'm only 5'7", and I remember in 8th grade, I was sitting in the dentist's office and I was reading a magazine. It said the average American height is 5'8". And I remember from that point on, and at night I would pray, God, please let me be 5'8". Please let me be 5'8". I went into high school. I was 4'11". And, I remember being younger, having like a man crush on like Paul Walker and Brad Pitt and stuff. And like, man, that's what I want to look like. And bodybuilding really helped me to accept that I'm 5'7". I have no qualms with it. To me, it's hilarious when I hear people exaggerate about their height and stuff. And what's funny, and I tell people about this, is in bodybuilding, you'll actually hear people. I've actually heard guys lie about being shorter than they really are, so they seem more massive. But that's, off the top of my head, that's another thing I'm grateful for bodybuilding. I'm extremely confident with myself, who I am. And yeah, but back to the mentors, I read a lot. So a lot of my mentors and influences have come from books. Another reason why I'm drawn to like Dorian and people like that, I really appreciate, kind of building with your mind first and then physically manifesting it.
So since we're there, I love these conversations with somebody who is disciplined in terms of learning, because I love learning myself. So what's a book? Just one. We'll leave it at one book because I don't want to be on this topic for too long. But what's one book that you could recommend, Russ or Clayton, to the listeners that you've really found a lot of value in, that you think may really have a great impact on the listeners if they go out and grab that book?
So I'll say this: I grew up watching, not realizing it, but subconsciously observing and watching. My mom was an avid reader. My mom could read 100 pages a night before bed, and I'm actually a really slow reader. But it taught me to appreciate reading, which really started to stick in my early 20s. And I'd love to give you just one book, but I have 3.
Okay,
and
let's do it.
Conversations with people about books. It used to be 2, but about 2 years ago, it developed to 3. But those books would be 100% if you're an entrepreneur, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. That's a book I try to reread at least once a year. Another book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Dr. Stephen Covey. And a third book is Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. So those 3 books, I think that will make you a pretty complete person if you were to read those 3. If you're really trying to advance and progress in life and not have any excuses, I think those 3 books will tremendously help you.
Excellent. Now we're going to touch on Can't Hurt Me, because I've listened to David Goggins, through different mediums, podcasts and interviews and things like that. I haven't listened to him for a long time because I feel like I don't want to get too caught up in one individual's message, right? But I truly believe if we're willing to listen and we have open minds and open ears and open hearts, we can learn a lot from different people. But consuming too much content from one person, from my personal perspective, can actually be detrimental. But when it comes to David Goggins, in my own head, when I've been listening to him, I've said, this guy, this human being is on another level of, like, I would say, humanity, just because of the mindset and then actually backing up that mindset with his actions. What is something, or if there's more than one, feel free to share. I don't care. Take as long as you want, kind of talking about it. But what's one thing or a few things specifically from David Goggins, Clayton, that you have been able to glean or take away from that individual?
So, not to give you a sermon or be religious or anything. At the age of 20, I read the Bible from Genesis to Revelation for the first time. And the Bible in its entirety from Genesis to Revelation, I've read it 7 times. If you amounted the amount of times that if you added up, like Bible studies, reading different books of the Bible and everything, I've probably read the Bible in its entirety, probably close to 20 times. And I've actually, since the age of 33, taken the religious blinders off and seen that if you will take the religious blinders off, you'll see that Jesus, Buddha, Gandhi, Mother Teresa, they all taught the same message. And there's nothing contradicting about that message. It makes it even more beautiful and more profound when you can actually see that. That's something that Dorian actually sees. I haven't even heard him specifically talk about it, but I can tell by the way he speaks that he understands it. And I would say this could kind of get me off topic from David Goggins, so I won't go down that path. But first off, when I heard about David Goggins, I automatically assumed that he came from this great pedigree, being a Navy SEAL and all the feats, the mega races and stuff that he was doing. So what blew my mind is when you actually read the book and you see the horrible childhood he came from, horrible home life. His dad used to beat the crap out of him, his brother, his mom, not the smartest guy. And, and he takes everything with such stride, and I don't know if you allow cussing or whatever on here. It's the no fucks bag, basically looking into the mirror and, don't give yourself any excuses. And I mean, just his book, it's just so powerful. And when you understand how he didn't have a head start on anybody, if anybody, he was starting way behind everybody. And, even the way that he would, have to learn the manuals and stuff and like write it down in notebooks while everybody else is just reading, gleaming over it, studying, he would have to write down word for word, everything. The crazy thing is, though, what's truly impressive about me is you could parallel David Goggins' life, his work ethic, his mindset with the Apostle Paul. The Apostle Paul said that, and again, I'm not giving you a religious sermon here. I just, if people studied the Apostle Paul, you would actually see he was a pretty impressive person himself. But he said, shipwreck me, throw me in prison, whip me, do whatever you have to do to make me grow in the image of Jesus Christ. And David Goggins, same thing. Beat the shit out of me, put me through military training, let me run the whatever race, whatever it takes to be the baddest motherfucker on earth, put me through that and I'll come out of it and I'll be ready for the next thing after that. And that is, so I got somebody.
That's okay.
Are you there?
Yep, we're good. We're good. It's all good.
Yeah, but David Goggins, just truly impressive individual.
Excellent, man. I appreciate you touching on that. Like I said, I've gleaned some insights from that guy, and I've never read his book, but I've only heard great things. So so let's take a step back into your story, Clayton. So you kind of touched on high school a little bit, but when you were kind of getting towards the end of high school, what were your thoughts in terms of what you were going to do post high school? Were you planning on going to college? Did you go to college? Kind of like, what did you think about at that age in terms of what you wanted to be when you grew up, or did you even have any thoughts? Just talk about post high school if you don't mind.
Okay. Well, so like you were saying, finishing up high school, I'm a completely different person than I was then. And I just, again, I was trying to fit in with the crowd. I didn't know who I was. And I remember thinking, I had a chemistry teacher who told me, I told my chemistry teacher, I said, I'm going to take a year off. And I had a guidance counselor tell me the same thing. I said, I'm going to take a year off. And they said, don't do it. You'll never end up going to college. And I said, oh, I'm fine. I'll do it, whatever. And my dad at the time was doing really well in construction, inspecting houses for banks. And I figured, well, I'm going to go into that. And it's just really kind of a cocky, arrogant mindset. And honestly, I was probably lying to myself. If I'm being honest, I really had no idea what I was going to do. So I ended up going into construction, doing all kinds of different construction. And probably at the time, if you were to really get down to the core of it, I was probably, embarrassed of it and would have an excuse for why I'm doing this. Looking back now, I'm grateful for the work ethic, the variety in life, the contrast. But so, in 2007, when we had the recession, I had actually worked my way into that position working for my dad, where I was inspecting houses for Wachovia Bank and Regions Bank. And it was just a gravy job. I would work on Wednesdays and Thursdays, was making more money than I knew what to do with. And then the recession hit and the banks weren't, loaning out money to build houses anymore. So one of my good buddies who owned a personal training company, he said, he's like, why don't you come be a personal trainer? And when the recession's over, you can go back to inspecting houses. And, we thought the recession was just going to be, 3 to 6 months. And I remember I started doing the personal training, and my thoughts on it was like the 1980s tennis instructor you see in movies, who's just a sleaze bag. He sleeps with his clients and nobody really respects him. And so people would ask, well, what are you doing? I said, well, I'm doing personal training right now, but it's just until the recession's over. And it was just a blessing in disguise. I'm so grateful that I did go into it. But yeah, if you were to talk to me in high school, I would have never thought that. I wouldn't have even known the first thing about personal training, in high school. So, right. Yeah.
Okay. So something that's kind of on my mind as you share your story and unpack your story, Clayton. The thing that's on my mind is at some point, because you said you're a lot different now presently than you were, when you were younger, which hopefully most of us are, but it feels like just as you're sharing your story, at some point, I don't know if there was a breaking point or a transformation point, but I feel like at some point something gave and you began to go down that personal growth path, and you've kind of become who you are right now presently. Is that fair to say? And if it is fair to say, would you discuss with us, would you share with us kind of what that breaking point or what that turning point was in your life to begin to kind of build your life into who you are presently?
Yeah. So I think, foundationally as a person, my core knowledge, the foundation is the Bible. Now, when I say that, I'm not saying, I'm this devout Christian. From the age of 25 to the age of 33, I was extremely devout, and I was part of a Christian sect that truly strived to live by the Bible. And today's Christianity is not the same Christianity of the apostles and of Jesus. And so anyway, I was part of that. And for instance, they were Sabbath keepers. So from Friday sundown to Saturday sundown is the actual Hebrew Sabbath. Most people don't know that. They think it's Sunday. And again, there's no judgment there. And to be quite honest with you, my mindset now, I really don't think God cares. That's kind of a whole nother conversation. But however, there's so much rich knowledge and wisdom in the Bible that I do think is inspired by a divine creator. And you can parallel those writings with other wise philosophers throughout history, and they all teach the same thing. But however, from the age of 20 to 33, reading the Bible every day, it really helped me to discover who I am, to have peace with myself, to have peace with my creator. I think if I get down to the meat of it and kind of what I feel when I speak with most people go through life fearing death, which prevents them from actually enjoying life. So I don't fear death. I'm kind of like what John Lennon said, death is getting out of one vehicle and into the next vehicle. So that kind of helped me. The bodybuilding helped me. I went through a large part of working out bodybuilding where Christianity was teaching me that it's narcissistic, it's wrong, you're worshiping your body. And in the beginning, myself and if you speak with most people, if they're honest with you, if you're getting good results, you're feeding off the compliments. It's going straight to the ego. You like it, you love it. Eventually it gets to a point where that's no longer your motive. Now it's, I've gotten this far with my body. Where else can I take it? And I train a lot of successful entrepreneurs, and it's a theme with a lot of successful people. They started out working out and they say, I can do this with my body. What can I do with my mind? What can I do with a business? So again, going back to like Dorian and Kai, and people, for instance, with the Olympia, well, why doesn't Kai compete? In my opinion, I think Kai has transcended bodybuilding. He's moved on from the IFBB and the Olympian. He's making movies and his comic books and all this other stuff. And that's the beauty of bodybuilding. If you actually get to the spiritual side of it, the philosophical side of it, is it teaches you discipline. It teaches you how for that discipline to carry over into other areas of your life. And like I say, reading, studying. I'm an introvert, so I really appreciate solitude. I try to get up 2 to 3 hours before I have to leave the house so that I can spend time with just myself and reflect what's worked, what hasn't worked. I think in the morning, for instance, I truly feel that the morning is sacred time. For somebody, it may be night. For me, I like the morning. Or it could be the middle of the day, whatever a person chooses. But I really I think the morning, it sets the tone for the day. You can really drink in wisdom and let that set the tone, let it give you a good positive attitude, a good mindset. It's easy, to have a bad day, to go to sleep and then wake up that next day. And most people are just go, 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 go. So they're staying in that same mindset or that same vibration, and they're going out into their day. and it's just perpetuating that cycle. If you can, 7 habits of highly effective people, the 7th habit is sharpen the saw. So have you ever read the book?
I
Seven
have not.
So Dr. Covey, he starts out that chapter with, there's a guy walking through the woods and he sees this guy sawing on this huge tree. And he walks up to him. He says, "Man, that's a huge tree. How long have you been sawing on it?" He says, "I've been sawing on it for about 3 hours now." And the guy says, "Man, you must be tired." And he said, "Well, I am. I've been sawing the whole time." And he says, "Well, have you stopped to sharpen the saw?" And so that's what people do. And again, going back to that wisdom from the Bible and other religions, but the Sabbath principle, taking one day out of 7, what has worked for you this week? What hasn't? And again, especially in being a product of capitalism, we're just on this perpetual treadmill of go, 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 go. The ancient Greek philosophers, know thyself and to thy own self be true. Philippians chapter 3, the apostle Paul said, every man must figure out his own salvation with fear and trembling. Most people are so busy on their smartphones, on watching Netflix, on Amazon, that they don't take the time to find out who they truly are. And that's who I was as a kid, that I was telling you, I didn't know who I was. So when you can discover that, you'll be so much further ahead in life. You'll have so much more peace with yourself, so much more peace with other people. Yeah.
So who the question then that I have for you, Clayton, because I agree 100% with you in terms of, we as human beings, we need to know, I word it as, we need to know what our purpose is, right? Like, I have an opportunity to go to a juvenile detention center once or twice a month here in the town that I live in Iowa. And that's something that I always talk to those kids about. And it's something that I believe is the foundation of humanity, and that is purpose, right? Like, what is my purpose? What is your purpose? What is our purpose? So you worded it a little bit different in terms of like, who am I? So the question that I do have for you is, who are you? Who do you consider yourself to be? And then at what point did you kind of discover that in your life?
I think I'm still discovering that. Sin, for instance, it's a man-made concept. I assume you're familiar with the law of attraction.
Yes, I am.
Yeah. So, like attracts like. If we look at the 10 commandments, it's not that if you keep the 10 commandments, God isn't going to punish you. God doesn't have to, especially if you believe in law of attraction. Like attracts like. If you don't kill people, you're not going to have to worry about someone coming to kill you, an angry relative or a spouse or something like that. If you don't lie, you don't have to worry about lies catching up with you. You don't have to worry about attracting other dishonest people into your circle. You don't commit adultery. You're not going to have to worry about a pissed off husband or someone coming to, hunt you down. These are just it's good principles to live by. And if you live by these, odds are you're going to live a prosperous, successful life. So, kind of going back to who am I, I'm still discovering my purpose. And, you have to give to receive. If a person doesn't want to give, God's not going to punish them. We have this, and this is my opinion, so I'm not going to force this on anybody. God's not going to punish you if you don't want to give, but odds are if you are not a giver, you're going to attract other people who are not givers around you. For instance, with knowledge, I like to give knowledge because I want to receive more knowledge. It's just the natural flow of life. If I give, I'll receive more, which that's going to lead me to more understanding. In my baby book, where my mom kept, my first haircuts, my baby teeth, all that stuff, she has written down 6 months old. She said, Clayton sits in his high chair and he watches his brothers and everybody else. And you can tell behind his eyes, he just wants to understand what's going on. And Jesus says, ask and you shall receive, knock and the door shall be opened to you, for he who asks receives, and he who knocks the door is open. The Persians knew this. They wrote Arabian Nights and the 10,000 Thieves. Aladdin finds the lamp, rubs on the lamp, the genie comes out, says, I'll grant you 3 wishes. It was a metaphor for the universe. Going back to Jesus, he also says, the reason you don't have is because you don't ask. And so whatever we ask for, and most people don't understand, but subconsciously you're asking and desiring on a constant basis. However, they think with the conscious mind what they're thinking that they're asking, but subconsciously what's programmed into there, that's what you're actually asking for. So I just, who am I? I want to understand. I want to help other people understand. We're talking about bodybuilding, there's competitive bodybuilding, with capitalism and stuff. Competition's not a good thing. It brings out the best in us. If someone's better than you, that's okay. It's going to bring out a better side of you, or make you maybe discover something else that you were more intended for. So yeah, who am I? I just, I want to understand. I want to give. I want to attract people around me who also feel the same way. My wife, it's so funny. Her and I are like opposites. And there's times when, we have disagreements or something. It would be so easy to just throw your hands up in there and say, I should just be alone, or we should split up. But if you truly desire to grow as a human being and to be more complete, like, she completes me, because when I'm patient, she's impatient. And, there's so many opposites about her and I, but it's so awesome because we complete one another. But yeah, who am I? I just, I want to give, I want to help. I'll tell you this. I truly believe that success, and that's at the core of me, I am a huge fan of success. I believe that success, if it's not the same thing as holiness, what the Bible speaks of in other religions, it's extremely synonymous with it. And so, Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, Tom Brady, Warren Buffett, all these successful people, look at the instructions like in Leviticus for like how God gives exact instructions for the tabernacle to be built. There's principles. And if you abide by these principles, if you sacrifice, if you work hard, if, Luke chapter 14, who builds a tower without considering the cost? You need to consider the cost, what it's going to take to, if some people are delusional. Well, I want to do this, but they haven't really considered the cost, what it's going to take to build that body or to build that company. But that's my thing is, I want to be successful. I want to help other people be successful. I would like to, one day or at the end of my life, I would like to be able to pull up a chair and sit with Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, Tom Brady, people like that. Like that's, again, going back to Jesus. Jesus was prophesying to some people. He was teaching, and some of his followers came up and they said, Jesus, your family is outside. They want to talk to you. And he said, my family is here. This is my family. And that's the thing. When you discover who you are and, what you love, what you're passionate about, you're going to draw those same people around you. And it makes life so much richer. It makes waking up in the morning so much more exciting. And so that's kind of that's my gist. Who am I? I want to be successful. I want to help other people be successful, and just, give.
Perfect. So you've brought up bodybuilding a lot. Obviously, this is a podcast about bodybuilding. You've had a successful bodybuilding career. Why don't you talk about some of the highlights? I know on your Instagram and your bio, you have 2018 NPC Mr. Georgia. So why don't you talk about getting into actually not just lifting weights, but actually competing in the NPC? Again, talk about some of those highlights. You've already talked a little bit about kind of like what bodybuilding has done for you, but maybe just a little bit more of how bodybuilding has really fueled that personal transformation. So talk about the contest history, highlights, and then how bodybuilding has kind of catapulted you once again into the individual you are today.
Yeah. So, you know, I've been consistent. So when I told you I got that gym membership, I was 18. So that was 2000. So from 2000 to 2005, I was, I'd work out a couple months and then I'd miss a couple months. And I was, busy partying and drinking and, just being a young, reckless guy with, no sense of direction. And so since 2005, I can honestly say I haven't missed a workout. I haven't missed a week of working out. And if I have, it was structured into my plan. It was, taking a day off or taking a week off, and that's not to say, there's been days like every single day I'm in the gym. And I'm not one of them hardcore guys, like there are no days off. I'm a big believer in the Sabbath principle. I think not only does the body need physical rest, the spirit, the mind, everything needs rest. And it's when we do rest that the best ideas come to us, or problems that we've been having, the solution comes to us out of nowhere. With clients, I was, texting with a client yesterday morning and her weight has been stalling. And I told her, I said, take today off, don't do cardio, don't work out, just go outside, enjoy the weather, and, just enjoy being with your family. And I think that's, pretty good advice. But back to competing. So when I was in that church, the Sabbath was Friday from sundown till Saturday sundown. So all of your competitions are on Saturdays. The crazy thing is, in 2008, one of my best friends at the time was competing in the 2008 Mr. Georgia. And I remember going to the competition that Saturday night, the finals. And I was sitting there thinking, man, how cool would it be to be Mr. Georgia? And to me, it's crazy. Like, to me, I don't know why, but, being Mr. Georgia, that was like winning the Arnold or winning the Olympia. And I had no idea that 10 years later, I would win the Mr. Georgia competition. But so anyway, I had people telling me, they're like, man, you should compete. And I would just, it's not for me. I didn't get into the whole religious thing that I can't compete on the Sabbath. Most people wouldn't understand it. But finally in 2015, I had a client who's basically a mentor to me now. He was like, man, you need to compete. It would be good on your resume. So I ended up competing in the Lee Haney, the very first Lee Haney games here in Georgia. It was in 2015. I won my class as a lightweight, which got me a national qualification. About 2 months after that, I ran into Vince Crawford, who's the head MPC judge here in Georgia, and Lee Haney, both at a opposing clinic. And they told me that they remembered me from the competition. And one of my gifts is conditioning. It's pretty easy for me to come in conditioned. So they told me, they said, man, you got the goods, you could get your pro card. And they said, are you working with a coach? And I said, no. So I ended up getting a coach. That led me to competing at USA's in 2016. And I took my coach's advice and went, and no discredit to my coach at the time, but I really didn't belong there. I wasn't ready for a national stage like that yet. To put it in plain terms, I feel like I shit the bed. I remember being there, and like Jay Cutler was there, Sean Ray was there, Flex Wheeler was there, Steve Weinberger was calling out, the mandatories and everything. And it was just, the moment was so much bigger than me. And actually, funny thing is, 2016, as a middleweight, I competed against Derek Lunsford, and we thought he was going to win. He actually ended up getting second place. He came back the next year and won the overall for USA's. but yeah, and he won the 212 Olympia, finally, this past weekend. But again, I had a great time out there. My wife and I went. We weren't married at the time, but we went out there. I competed. We had a great time in Vegas. It was my first time going. So anyway, took some time off to really focus on what I needed to correct and fix and everything. In 2017, I got with Matt Jansen, who's a phenomenal coach. Got with him. He helped me do the Georgia and then helped me do North Americans. And it was a great experience. It was a great prep. Again, Matt Jansen, phenomenal coach. He brought me in dialed in for the Georgia. I was extremely crisp and, conditioned. So then I planned on competing again in 2020. And so started to prep, and I also got married in 2020. So COVID happened, and, got married and didn't end up competing in 2020. And honestly, every year I'll do a prep, regardless if I compete or not. I'll usually do like a photo shoot or whatever. And for the past 10 plus years, I get leaned out every summer, every time it's warm. And however, in 2020, when I did that and I leaned out, I did a photo shoot. I didn't get tested, but I'm pretty sure I came down with COVID. And for whatever reason, man, just the competition bug that week, when I was, what we would consider the peak week, I was like, what am I doing? I love working out, love dieting, love everything about bodybuilding. Like, I'm even dieting. I do cardio and stuff right now. But just the want to compete has kind of left me. Not to say that I'll never compete again, but I'm just at the moment enjoying it. And to me, Kobe Bryant said, I understand everything in life because of basketball. And I say the same thing. I understand everything in life because of bodybuilding. I can give you a metaphor for, you give me any situation in life, and I can make a metaphor out of a chest, a bench press training program, or, a really heavy squat or deadlift or whatever. Dieting, heavy weightlifting, resistance. It's just, philosophically, it's a beautiful thing. I don't know if I
100%. No, I couldn't agree more. So kind of the wrap up of that part of our conversation, we're going to start heading towards the finish line. Bodybuilding, Clayton, has done what for you and given you what?
My wife hates it when I say this. Bodybuilding it's my first love, my passion. I started working out at 123 pounds. Right now I'm probably sitting at about 205. I'm pretty lean. I'm not stage ready, but I'm pretty lean right now. And again, it helped me build a body, which helped me build a mindset, which I think, going back to the Bible, anything you do it with all your might. And I think if you, whether you're a musician, a mechanic, an engineer, you're bagging groceries at the grocery store, whatever you do, if you do it with all your might and you're trying to be successful, you will understand life and the principles of life. It's just, it's completely unavoidable. And from bodybuilding, I can do that. I could sit with Bill Gates. I could sit with Michael Jordan. I could sit with anybody, and I could confidently speak with them because I know bodybuilding, I know weight training, I know dieting, I know discipline. And that's the beautiful thing. If, there's nothing wrong with appreciating your body and flexing in the mirror. I'm all for it. but I hope that most people can kind of transcend that and start to see the actual principles that you can learn from it.
Beautiful. I going back to like Dorian Yates and Kai Green, kind of like two of your all-time favorite bodybuilders. I really am resonating, Clayton, with what you're saying, because there is so much more to life than our physical body. There's so much more to life, this current life, than the material things that we strive after and most of us are pursuing after. And I really, really connect with you in terms of, you know, bodybuilding is a great starting point, right? And there are, I feel like, few people that realize that and really tap into bodybuilding being able to be a launching pad for more within this life. So I wish we had some more time to dig into that. Maybe I'll bring you on to dig into that a little bit more in the future. But for the listeners out there, I hope you guys are really gleaning from Clayton, because bodybuilding is beautiful. It's a beautiful sport. Like you said, there's so much within bodybuilding and strength training, lifting weights, that you can learn about life. But bodybuilding, again, is just a starting point. And if you really tap into the deeper levels of bodybuilding and the mindset and the spiritual side of things, man, like there's so much growth, not just physically, because the physical is temporal. You and I are not going to look the way physically we do today, you know, when we're 95 years old. Like, it's just not going to happen. But the mental growth, the spiritual growth, those aspects of tapping in to that through bodybuilding can last a lifetime. So I really appreciate your perspective and you kind of taking bodybuilding to that next level, which all of us can, once again, if we're open to it. So being respectful of your time, I've got a couple of things I want to touch on and then we'll finish. Functional hypertrophy. In the simplest way for all of us to be able to understand that, what is functional hypertrophy? And then, you know, how did you come about discovering that and training your clients in that manner?
So, you know, what I learned in working out from the people I was working out with was basically, you know, bodybuilding style workouts. And if you're not familiar with functional training, it's basically correcting dysfunctional movement patterns in the body. And if you watch most people, you know, whether it's a bench press or a squat pattern or whatever they're doing, most people, just because we live such a sedentary lifestyle, most people don't move functionally. And so if you have faulty movement patterns and you add resistance, weight on top of that, it's like building a house on top of a bad foundation. And so, you know, I learned bodybuilding first, you know, trying to go heavy as possible with squats, you know, 315, 405. And then around probably 2010 to 2012, I did a mentorship at a functional training facility, and I believe it was 2013, and learned the functional movement system from Gray Cook. And, you know, that's another thing. But what's good is there's a lot of good coaches out there, like Matt Jansen, John Jewett, and I'm sure there's other ones that I'm just not thinking of. John Meadows was great at it. They really understood how the body moved. And if you can keep the body moving in that correct movement pattern, and you can, you know, add muscle on top of it, you know, you're going to last a lot longer. And so, yeah, that's just Charles Poliquin, you know, when I actually looked into it and Googled it, he had already taken the term functional hypertrophy, and that's what I wanted to name my training. But yeah, it's just actually Ben Pekulski. That's another guy who's phenomenal with it. Hypertrophy training coach. What's his name?
Joe
Something Ben.
Bennett.
Joe Ben. Yeah. guys like them, man, they're phenomenal to learn from. And yeah, that's basically functional hypertrophy to me.
Excellent. Okay. War on weakness. That's kind of a hashtag on your social media that is present. What is war on weakness? Break that down for us. Share a little bit about what all that is, please.
So my best friend, guy named Matthias Maines, if you look him up on Instagram, he's Warpath Barbell. He actually came up with the war on weakness, a play on words. There may be other people that did as well. Jocko Willink or somebody like that, if you're familiar with them. But my buddy Matthias, he was a professional power lifter. He was competing at I think it was the 2017 Arnold Classic in powerlifting, and he ruptured both of his quads with 700 pounds. And, you know, when he went to the hospital and everything, and he's doing, you know, the rehabilitation and all that, the doctors were telling him, you know, you're never going to be able to train again. He's like, oh, I'll train. I'll be working out again. And, you know, within 8 days of that accident, rupturing both quads completely from the kneecaps, he was in the gym doing pull-ups. But anyway, they told him, they said, you know, you're being completely unreasonable. And he even has a weight belt that says that. But anyway, he came out with these shirts, War on Weakness. And, you know, something that was impressive is not much longer after that, I find out, and, you know, if you look at Matthias, he's a big dude, you know, genetically gifted, very strong. He competes in bodybuilding now. His powerlifting days are over. But, you know, most people have no idea. They'll look at his body and think, you know, he probably just spends all of his time building his body, but he's actually a successful branch manager of a nationwide company. And he's constantly moving up in the company. Most people have no idea he does so well for himself. And, you know, and I say that because there was one time he was on the leg press, and there were two older guys behind him, and he had his headphones in, but they didn't know that he could hear them talking. And one of the guys said, yeah, I could look like that too if I spent all my time, you know, working on my body. But he's like, you know, I gotta work and support my family. And he didn't say anything, but I'm sitting there thinking, like, man, this dude runs a successful company. Y'all have no idea. But anyway, the War on Weakness shirts, come to find out, he had been getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning and getting his master's degree. Didn't tell anybody about this. Was working on his master's degree, going into the office, doing his schoolwork. And one of his classes, he had to start a company, and it had to be profitable. And he started these shirts, War on Weakness. He's like, you know, I want to make shirts that I would wear in the gym. And of course, being my buddy, I'm like, yeah, man, I'll support that too. But, you know, I know tons of guys that make shirts. They make gym apparel that, you know, that basically, you know, to be blunt about it, looks like crap. But his stuff is actually, it's stuff that I would wear and I do wear. So I'm very supportive of it. Not only that, you know, his message, the War on Weakness, he actually, not only does he talk the talk, but he walks the walk. Yeah, so that's the War on Weakness stuff. If, you know, check him out, Warpath Barbell. He's a impressive guy.
For sure. I actually, once I was, like I said earlier, once I was kind of, when I was prepping for our conversation day, I came across him and another gentleman. I started following them. I'm definitely going to reach out to him and bring him on the podcast. Cause I love, and really value and appreciate guys like yourself, Clayton, who, you know, you guys have the physiques, you're in the gym, you're in the iron game, but then also there's that other side, like we're talking about, kind of like Jay Cutler is a perfect example. Jay Cutler is my all-time favorite bodybuilder, and he usually comes up at, you know, every conversation or every other conversation that I have on the podcast. And a lot of it is, hey, I respect Jay Cutler, the bodybuilder, but it's the business side of things that my guests, these top level coaches, these IFBB pros, they respect that. And so for me, as a business owner and a bodybuilder, like I love having guys like you on that have, you know, you have the muscle, you're in the iron game, but then there's that other side, that next level side of, hey, there's business, there's a lot more to this than just the body. So I started following him. He started following me. I'm gonna touch base with him, get him on the podcast. I'm excited. Last thing I want to ask you about, Clayton. I've been reposting on my Instagram stories some of your quotes that you've been sharing on your Instagram stories. I'm a huge quote guy. I find a lot of value in just words in general. One quote that I came across on your IG that I want you to talk about a little bit, and then we'll wrap it up. It says, "The art of knowing is knowing what to ignore." Explain that, and why is that kind of an important quote to you?
Yeah. So I'm big, and you'll see Matthias as well. I'm big on Stoicism. Ryan Holiday is a phenomenal author. So I read his book daily, The Daily Stoic. So that's Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Seneca, just a lot of great minds. You know, and Stoicism is basically, you know, be virtuous, don't be a little bitch, do what you're supposed to do, you know, help other people, don't be weak. You know, there's a season for everything, but, you know, at the end of the day, you need to be virtuous and do your job. But, you know, and when I posted what you're talking about, the art of knowing is knowing what to ignore. There's so many things that are outside of our control, especially this day and age. And it honestly, the second scripture I ever retained, I was in 8th grade, and it's from Ecclesiastes. And Solomon said, to increase knowledge is to increase sorrow. And, you know, when you see what the media and social media, what they do with people who, you know, myself included, but I try not to be a victim of it. You know, what they do to people by just getting them to, you know, hook, line, and sinker, just stuff that, Abraham Lincoln, he quoted Jesus from the Bible. He said, "A house divided amongst itself cannot stand." You know, if you have a whole nation divided amongst itself where, you know, conservative, liberal, Republican, Democrat, this person, that person, and everybody's just bickering, like, you can't focus on the issues that are actually within your control. You can, but most people are going to choose to, you know, focus on things that, you know, you should just ignore. You know, and again, I've trained several successful entrepreneurs that are millionaires, multi-millionaires, and they'll tell you, you know, it doesn't matter what president is in office, you're going to pay taxes. You may have to pay more, you may have to pay less. You know, if you have to get a different accountant, get a different accountant. But like at the end of the day, just do your job. And you know, you're busy wasting mental energy on things that are completely outside of your control. So yeah, that was why I posted that one day. It's kind of funny you say that. I had a friend in mind who was telling me something in the gym, and I'm just sitting there thinking, I'm like, dude, you have no control over this, and you're letting it like completely destroy your day. But yeah, that was the reasoning behind that.
Good stuff. Clayton, thank you so much for taking some time on your Monday to chop it up with me. We've covered a lot of different topics, a lot of different things, had a very thorough conversation. If there is anything that you kind of want to leave the listeners with at this time, feel free to share that. And then also, if somebody's listening to this, they've resonated with your story, they want to connect with you, they want to reach out, they want to find out more about you, War on Weakness, something maybe that you shared on the podcast. After you share kind of some of your final thoughts, go ahead and share with the listeners where they can connect with you, please, as well.
Oh yeah. And, you know, I appreciate you, Quentin. I thank you, you know, for having me on and, you know, being able to use this platform. One of my favorite quotes of all time, and, you know, I could write a book or start a book on it. Henry David Thoreau, he said, "The mass of men lead lives of quiet desperation, and the majority of them go to the grave with that song still in them." So, you know, where's the wealthiest place in the world? The graveyard. Books that were never written, companies that were never started, apps that will never be invented. You know, you name it. People, we go through life so worried about being judged by others. We don't strive to reach our true potential. Yeah, man, I would say, you know, going back to also, you know, who am I? It doesn't matter what economy or where you look in history, there's always going to be 10% that excels above the rest. It doesn't matter if it's in sports, if it's in business, it doesn't matter. If you go to the Bible, there's a theme throughout it: a tithe of the people, 10%, 10%, give 10%. Heraclitus, who was a Greek philosopher in general, he said, if 100 men go into battle, 90 of them are just targets, 9 of them are supposed to be there, and 1 is the leader. So I can also tell you from, you know, training successful people, you want to be part of that 10%. And again, you know, you want to earn and deserve your place to be amongst that 10%. If you look at the income of earners in the United States and even in other, you know, countries and economies, there's going to be 10% that, you know, excels above the rest, that controls the wealth. And you can even go even higher into, you know, the 1%. But that's the thing is throughout history, throughout mankind, there's been a theme that 10% is always going to excel above the rest. They're always going to be willing to do what the 90% are not willing to do. And that's who you want to be. That's who I am. That's who I strive to be. I'm grateful my wife is, you know, one of those people. You know, our friends, you know, and again, like attracts like. When you discover who you are and, you know, every day you strive to be better and better and better, you're going to find yourself around the same type of people. You know, it's no coincidence that, you know, Matthias and I are friends. You know, and there's other people in our circle that are the same thing. They kill it in the gym and they kill it in business, you know, and they're constantly working on, you know, self-development. So, you know, if you want to know who you are, look at the people around you, because the universe is constantly mirroring what's going on inside of you, outside of you. So yeah, that's what I would say. Strive to be one of those 10%.
And where can people connect with you on social media, Clayton?
You can find me on Instagram at Clayton Russell. I don't even know what my underscore and all that is, but if you just look up Clayton Russell, you'll find me. I think it's pretty much the same thing on Facebook. I'm not that active on Facebook. I'm trying to get more active on LinkedIn, but pretty much Instagram is the main social media that I'm active on.
Excellent, man. And you thanked me for giving you the platform. I just want to say you're very welcome. And once again, thank you for coming on, Clayton. So much value, so much great wisdom shared today. Listeners, once again, thank you so very much for listening to another episode of Behind the Muscle Podcast or watching on YouTube. 2 huge favors of all of you listeners, watchers, however you kind of want to word that. I would ask of you, first of all, if you haven't done so already, please go to YouTube, or if you're already tuning in through YouTube, hit the subscribe button. Why is that important? Because I release all of the episodes of Behind the Muscle Podcast on YouTube first, and then I shoot them out to all the other podcast platforms. So if you want to stay up, I think I've got 5, 6, up to 7 podcast conversations on deck for this week. I'm just grinding hard, giving this content to you guys. If you want to stay on top of all the episodes, hit the subscribe button on YouTube. Greatly appreciated. Also on YouTube, make sure you guys hit the like button. Make sure you also leave a comment specifically for this episode. What did you guys find in terms of value with what Clayton shared? There's, again, so much wisdom, so much information. You know, was there a quote? Was there something from his story? What did you find of value from Clayton's story today? Put that in the comments there on YouTube, and I'll make sure I respond and get back to you. Thank you guys for doing that. And then the second favor I'd ask of all of you listening, tuning in to Behind the Muscle Podcast today, take this episode, share it on all of your social media platforms. Make sure you tag Clayton, tag Behind the Muscle podcast. That way we know you're listening, you found great value. And again, thank you so much for the support. And finally, I will leave you all with this. Remember, behind the muscle, there's always a story. We'll catch you guys later.